welcome to Kingdom Coffee. Let's talk about that. Are you ready to talk about that, Julie?
I'm ready with my water. I just realized, I'm like, oh, it's Kingdom Coffee, and I'm drinking water.
Yes.
Okay.
She's being more healthy one, but they do say there are benefits to coffee, right?
Oh, I am a coffee connoisseur, so yes,
Right.
absolutely.
She already had her coffee.
I did.
So. I wanted to bring Julie on today because her and I have made a friendship over the years. We met in probably, I was trying to remember the year, like 2016 maybe, I want to say. Right away I could see that Julie was a go-getter and she put her eye to something and she moved after it. And I just would watch and see, like, wow, okay, where is this woman going? What is she doing? What is she up to? And every time you talk to her, she's up to something and something new. And so I've just had the joy and the privilege of having a friendship with her as well. And we've gotten to know each other, and we've had some iron sharpening iron, which is very good. And I was telling her one time that actually, I said, Julie, I think you're kind of rubbing off on me a little bit. Like, I'm stepping into these things that I never would have considered, or kind of that inclusivity. Like, she loves to connect the people, connect the dots, move the pieces. You know, she's over the chess game. Like, oh, okay, over there, you go there. So she's definitely got that networking, I think, apostolic, just heart for the body to be activated in all that God has put in each of them. And so today we're going to be talking about pastors. It came upon her heart, actually, and she just wanted to kind of go there a little bit. And I think it's a great subject because probably every single one of us knows a pastor or has had a pastor in our lives as a Christian. And so it's a good subject. But backing up for a second, I would love for you to tell a little bit about who you are and just give a little synopsis of Julie Nowatzki.
Okay. No, this is so fun. And I thank you, Jessica, for having me. I love what you're doing and just having these conversations around the table that I think are impressed upon us, but we just don't know how to navigate it. Like, where do we go? And you are such a woman of courage and boldness in this that the Lord has really started to cultivate even more. And so it's just an honor to be here and talk about this subject, because it definitely took me by surprise, I would say. But a little bit of backstory. I have been a believer my entire life. I was raised in a Christian home. We lived in Alaska, and we basically sold everything and went on the road and did music ministry for a year and a half.
So wild.
And so I was in a different church every single weekend.
Wow.
Okay.
That's an experience.
And as a little girl, of course, we knew the pastors. They would have us over for dinner. They would have conversation with us. We were the guest of the house.
Okay.
And so now thinking about it, I never really looked at a pastor as someone in authority over people. I saw that as someone who wants to bring in other people and deposit something. So that's kind of my growing up. And then I started working for a Christian record company.
Right.
And I moved up into a position of director of artist relations, and really realizing that, again, just recently, that I was pastoring artists.
Right.
And creatives. And let me tell you, that's not for the faint of heart. Being a creative myself in a different capacity, when I thought creativity was, songwriter, and I have started some songs, but music, and I do music, but there's something about a lie that I was believing, that I was not creative.
Interesting.
And even though I was a director of artist relations of a creative group, there was still something in me. I was not a painter. I was not an artist, a drawer. But the Lord was showing me I have different creative things inside of you.
Yeah, that's a great subject in itself.
Right?
People have this definition of creativity.
Exactly.
But creator of the universe. How many aspects are there in that?
Yes, exactly. And it wasn't really identified until I went to the School of Creativity down at Bethel. And I will never forget Mama T. She said, you were creative because you were created.
That's cool.
And
Right.
that was a statement that literally took it just projected me into a whole other venue that I would never have imagined I would have been in. So pastoring of creative artists, and then I walked away from everything. And then I started looking at, well, what else am I supposed to pastor?
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing that was what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm putting the definition of pastor right now in a place where I probably would have never put a pastor position
Mm-hmm.
in, because I always thought just pastor is, well, they're the pastor of a church.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're the pastor. They're the ones that are kind of the representatives of what God is asking them to steward in this house. But what the Lord is saying is there are many pastors, and they aren't just inside the church. Pastors of businesses. Pastors is really taking a group of people, or even just one person, and guiding and nurturing and leading them into who they're called to be.
Yeah. Yeah, helping them find their identity.
Exactly.
And then often I also think of parenting. I mean,
Absolutely.
Parenting is such a huge pastoral role. And great training ground if you want to actually pastor bigger groups of people.
Right.
Learn in your home, start in your home, because that's where it's the most challenging.
Right. Yeah, I think some pastors think the church is easier than the home.
Yes. And will actually get distracted by ministry and sacrifice their families, which is very sad.
Yes. Yeah. So as I was driving here today, I said, Lord, wow, this is a topic I really didn't think I'd be going to. Mm-hmm. But when you and I were talking, I just really felt like the Lord said, it's time now. I said, well, God, you're going to have to give me something that goes along with my life cycle. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't seem so far out there. Like, how does Julie get to speak into this? And I just Googled, gotta love Google and God. And I came across this phrase.
God-guided Google.
Right, exactly. Art of pastoring. And for people that know me, know that I love acronyms. If I get a short word, I'm like, okay, Lord, what's the word for this? And what I heard drop in my spirit was acceptance, relationship, transformation.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely, I think, fitting for a pastor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. Julie always gets the acronyms from the Lord.
That's my love language. Him and I, we have a love language of acronyms.
Yes, they do. What is it? Crosswords together all the time. No,
I like that. I love that. Yes. Okay. What word, Lord? The strategy. The strategist in me is like, okay, how can we make that fit? Are you sure it's not this one, God?
Right. That's funny. I like words too. I'm a very literal person, so words mean a lot. And so I'm very intentional with the words I use. Or, Liam, my 8-year-old the other day, was like, oh my gosh, you scared me to death. I'm like, don't say that.
Right.
You scared me a lot.
No, words are powerful.
I know, right?
I mean, we know.
I take it very literal.
Yeah.
We have death and life in the power of the tongue.
Yep.
So my kids are aware of how strongly I feel about words.
No, that's important. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Would you think of yourself as pastoral?
So, and that was a question the Lord asked me, because I think in certain instances, yes. Mm-hmm. I think I have a grace for a certain limit.
Okay.
I think if the Lord brings someone into my life where I'm recognizing there's something on their life.
Yeah.
And he's already kind of shown me some direction that he wants to take them, but there's healing that needs to take place.
Yeah.
There will just be a spirit to spirit. And I'm like, okay, God, what am I supposed to do in this relationship? Mm-hmm. But I joke, because I used to be Dr. Julie, like Dr. Laura. Mm-hmm. I would have friends call me because, again, working with artists for 20 years, you're working through the mess of their life to become a message. Mm-hmm. And so you're getting to know the vulnerable areas, and you're helping them process it. You're helping them get unstuck. So you are pastoring them through to get to transformation.
Right.
And you're accepting them
where
they're at. And so, but once a person gets to a place where they continue to do the same thing over and over again, and they are like, well, I wonder why this is still happening.
Yeah.
And I say, well, it's because you need to shift this. And they're not willing to.
Yeah.
Then I feel like the grace is lifted, and I bless them.
Right. Which to me makes me think of you more in that area as kind of a coach. Because coach is for sports.
Mm-hmm,
They know
mm-hmm.
this kid or this person needs to
Right.
face some pain.
Right.
And so you get
Right.
stronger. Come on, do it.
Right,
work
right,
out, work it out, work
right.
it out. You got this, you got this.
Right.
And so, but it is interesting that the Lord put pastor on your heart for today.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm someone that I don't have any rules about, you can't talk on that because you're not educated enough in that, or you don't have a degree in that, or theology in that.
Right, right.
I just throw all that out.
Yeah.
If God wants to speak through a donkey, he can speak through a
Exactly.
donkey. And so I do feel he does give us
Yeah.
revelation. And even he speaks a lot to me through scriptures that are sometimes out of context, and he speaks directly to me. And some people, especially religious people, stuck in like, it has to be this way, it has to connect to this, it can really get them stuck.
Yeah.
And back to that creative word, oh my gosh, God is so outside of the box.
Right.
Yeah. So outside of the box. And we can't be one-dimensional thinkers, or we're going to miss 99% of the picture.
Well, exactly. And when I had a network reach out to me and say, we want to license you as a minister, I said, well, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, okay, if I need that to be able to be approved and accredited for what I'm doing, well, that's fine. But I don't operate in titles. Yeah. I mean, I understand there's an honoring that comes alongside a function. Yeah. But with pastoring, the way the Lord has used me, especially after breaking away from, the record company, is he has placed me in places where I am, in sense, pastoring, but it's not inside a church. It's in business. It's in government. It's in media, because I'm trying to redefine what does it look like. And then because of my connectivity and because of my excitement of getting others to be a part of something that's greater than themselves, I pastor them into a new understanding of what it takes. Because when I started Convergent Promotions, there was a lot of hesitancy from people like, well, why do we need to promote kingdom? Like, why do we need a PR for God? I was like, well, how are people going to find out about what you're doing if all you're doing is staying in your silo?
Right.
And so I think that's the other thing with me is I never really approach pastors from the authority of the pastoral position. I approach them in that business with, how can I come alongside and serve you? I see that you have this event going on. I think it would be amazing for other people that are outside of your church to find out about it. What can I do for you?
Yeah.
And so it's on a friendship base.
Yeah. Which again, I think I would still put you in the category of apostolic, because you really move the pieces and you want the culture to shift, and you see where things can go and where they can move and who needs to connect to what. And I think that's fine. I don't think we're all supposed to operate in every single office.
No.
And it's interesting because there's a lot of different discussions on that topic itself, like whether we're supposed to like have all of them talking about the fivefold, or if there's many more, which of course there's many more gifts, but I personally believe he specifically named the fivefold because these are sort of like the 5 categories that branch into all the others, and that these are the 5 influences or influencers that sort of ignite the others to step into their call that's similar or whatever. So,
but why is pastor the one that gets used more than any other?
Yes, great question.
Why do people assume that they get that title of pastor just because they're leading a group of people? I've had people call me pastor and they believe I am their pastor
because you were leading,
because I'm engaging with them and helping them come alive into what they're called to do. And I incorporate scripture, and there is a level of care, but it's not inside the church. Right. So it's outside of the church. But because I think we have flippantly placed the title of pastor on too many people that really don't have a pastoral's heart.
Totally.
And that's why I wrestle with even, people calling me a pastor, because I'm like, oh no, like I will push you out. And I don't think I have the level of care that pastors have.
I agree. I agree with you in that.
And so I think especially I'm always looking at this next generation. What do they need? Do they need more pastors, we unfortunately have seen a major fallout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot
And
of
guess what? They're
exposure.
watching. They're watching
Right,
that.
right.
So when people approach, say, "Oh, I'm Pastor so and so," I mean, I actually think it puts a guard up.
Yeah.
If there's no relationship,
Right.
because they're immediately saying, I mean, you don't. That's when you start kind of jockeying for position. Like, I'm Pastor so and so. Okay.
What does that
Like,
mean?
what does that mean? And am I supposed to act differently? Like, am I not supposed to be real and honest with you? Because, I just
or
think
the
it's
opposite.
a little.
Like some people, when they hear it's a pastor, they suddenly feel, oh, you're going to judge me.
Exactly.
Oh,
yes.
you want to see what I'm doing wrong in my life. Or,
yes. Yeah.
So we definitely have these weird ideas of what pastor is. And then, of course, the world who doesn't know Jesus has a very interesting perspective of the church institution. And sometimes, I am like, I'm not into religion, actually. I'm into relationship. And I'm just figuring out how to love people better and how to receive his love more. And when you narrow it down to these two, he wasn't joking. All the law can fit into these. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Exactly.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart.
It's the greatest antidote. And I think, I shared this on another interview, is that we cannot expect the world to be convicted by the same things that convict us as believers.
Of course not.
Because they don't have
Jesus. No, they
but
don't have that conviction.
we are screaming this loud message at them that they are this, they are that, they are this, they should come into alignment. But yet they don't even believe.
Right.
People will believe when they belong. And I think we're so quick at just pushing information onto people, thinking that they're going to have this revelation. But really, we need less information and more transformation.
Yeah, and I really think not just this generation, but people in general are so tired of fake. So tired of counterfeit. Can you just be real? Can you just love me where I'm at? Meet me where I'm at?
Exactly.
And I think that's kind of the journey I've been on, is coming out of religion and realizing how much indoctrination I've been under without even knowing. And I thought that's the right thing. And when you hang out with people that believe the same thing, you're going to stay confirming the same thing.
Right. Exactly. It's true.
So some of you might need to find some new people to hang out with that will stretch your faith, stretch your thinking, make you uncomfortable, offend your mind a little bit. It's a great place to be, because you don't want to stay in just a stuck spot, not feeling like you're growing or being stretched. I mean, your muscles become apathetic and atrophy if you don't use them.
Well, and that's the mark of spiritual maturity, right? When you can disagree with someone and still come alongside of them. The immature is the yes, 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 yes. But when you put a hard no, actually, I don't agree with that. Okay, that's fine, but I still love you.
Yes, and that is sadly rare.
Very rare. Well, it's that great book, the emotional maturity, spiritual maturity. Like, you can't be emotionally mature if you're not spiritually mature, and vice versa. And I think there's that lack of maturity right now in the body of Christ, because we have just isolated ourselves to the same conversation, and we just regurgitate the conversation. And that's why I loved being in the political space, because it was so exciting to hear the things that were being said, but not in a Christianese way, but in a very hey, we actually do agree on a lot of the same things.
Which is actually surprising to hear in the government.
Well, exactly. That's what I mean. So, don't be surprised when God says, hey, I need you to go into this space for a while.
Yes.
Because they need you. They need you to occupy that space. And even just sitting in the room and listening to different meetings and council meetings, and you're like, wow, there's actually just this innovation that's out there in the world that I think the church needs to adopt in a way.
Yes.
So that we can bridge conversations.
Yeah, actually, you're making me think of God started calling me out into Kingdom Coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that I would be starting a coffee shop. I still don't know yet.
Right.
I envision that maybe in the future. But as I stepped towards it with the physical things that I could do, research it, look at the business plan, start thinking business, my mindset shifted and I started thinking in a whole new way.
Right.
And I realized, sneaky God, he's so smart. He knew I needed to get outside of the church model to start thinking different.
Yes.
And so even in this process, I'm thinking, I can't run a business and be in ministry. It's like, hello.
Business street.
Yeah. Business
they
street.
Can go hand in hand together.
And what I started to see was like, oh my gosh, the church institution needs to adopt some of these business models, like some of the tools. I'm not saying the whole thing.
No.
And it can get funky when a church is just a business. Right. Obviously, that can be extreme too.
Yes, yes.
But I really saw like the collaboration. There wasn't the competition.
Yep, exactly.
And just really thinking outside the box. I kept being like, oh my gosh, you could break all the rules. You could just do what you want. Like it's your business to bring God into in any way that he wants.
Absolutely.
It was really fun and exciting. And then he turned that on its head.
Right.
And here I am doing Kingdom Coffee Talks. So he's fun like that. Yes, you just say yes to those little steps.
Exactly.
And Julie came behind me and believed and was nudging me. Go for it, Jessica. Go, do it. So she's great at that if you have an idea, you know. And she's like, yes, I believe in you. You can do it, you know. So just kind of coming back to the subject of pastor, I think it's interesting that, and by the way, I'm not against pastors at all.
Right. Like, no.
I love what they do.
Absolutely.
And I think it's amazing the amount of commitment and loyalty and love they have for the people. Oftentimes, what makes me sad is usually the burnout level of pastor.
Right.
And I feel, from having been in the church for over 30 years, the church institution, I've seen that they take on too much false responsibility for the whole body. And that's where I think God was very wise in telling us we need the fivefold. So it's churches have been pastor-led, which is actually backwards because even in the scriptures it says the foundation should be the apostles and the prophets. And the pastor is the one that is really pouring in the time and the effort. Pastors don't even necessarily preach, just that they aren't always teachers.
Right.
But they think they're supposed to be.
Right.
And you can tell when they're not supposed to be because you're so bored every Sunday. And you realize, I think this person is not in their calling.
Well, I think that's interesting too. And I was wondering if the Lord was going to have me go here because there was a church that we were attending and a lot of respect because they actually, they broke out their pastoring. So it wasn't just one pastor. They actually had 3 pastoring positions.
Okay.
So you had your teaching pastor, you had your lead pastor, and then you had your community pastor.
Okay.
And so there was a rotation that took place because you're right. Sometimes the grace on the pastors, they love people so well.
Yeah.
As sometimes the detriment to not wanting to upset the people.
Yes, that's the other side.
That they will hold back some true convictions that God is saying, will you speak this to my people?
Yep.
But because in fear, which that's unfortunate, of what is going to happen, they aren't obedient.
Right.
And I think that's honestly where a lot of the burnout can happen because when God is asking you to do something and you continue to act in rebellion and not obey God, the grace is going to lift. And I think, unfortunately, when pastors, that is their main form of income, and there's not a vocation outside of pastoring, that's where it can be really challenging.
Absolutely.
Which, again, the church was never supposed to be a model where the finances came in and let's just look and see what we can do within the church.
Right.
But the income is not being distributed to the people that are actually the builders outside of the church to assess and say, hey, we have this amount coming in.
Yeah.
It's going to all the different hourly employees of the church.
Right. So it's staying
that are
in the
again
church.
serving the inside of the church.
Right.
So their scope, their view is, well, we need to fund this more in the church.
Yeah.
We need to fund this. It's like, wait a second here. What if we're called to reach the lost?
Yeah.
What are we doing to go outside of the church to find the lost? And is that going to probably take some investment financially? Absolutely. So how can you start dispersing funds in a way that is going to bring the lost in? Because what we have to realize is they're not going to just come knocking on the door. Does it happen? Absolutely. But we're called to go, not stay.
Yeah.
So,
and we want a place where they would want to come.
Absolutely.
And most people look into the church and they're like, why would I want to join that?
Right.
And so that's pretty sad because we're the ones that are supposed to be the light that people are drawn to and excited. Like, where's the power of God in our churches? You know, where is the signs and the wonders and the true love for one another, that we actually get along?
Yes, the world will know us by our love for one another.
Yeah.
And the thing that too has been kind of disrupting me is there's a form of godliness, but denying its power.
Yes, yes. He's spoken to me that many times.
Because if there's one word that comes from your mouth that the Lord said, I want you to say this one word or this one message, and it's going to penetrate and pierce the hearts of the people that are in that service or wherever it is, that's what I need you to say. Not your 3-point sermon, not this, not that, not a message that I spoke to you last year that you were supposed to do, but because of this, this, and this. Like, what is the now message that God is saying to you now?
Yeah.
And there is preparation, absolutely. I'm not saying that you just show up and not prepare, but you have something prepared.
Yeah.
But be prepared.
Then he might change
Then he may change it.
Yes.
And would we be so bold to say, that's the place where I wanna serve?
Yeah.
Is where they're so attuned to the Spirit moving that day, because God knows who's there. He knows what message. And if it's just the one person that he wants to reach that day, he may completely shift your message to encounter them.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need less entertainment and more encountering.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about what you said with, you know, the pastor maybe is afraid to speak some of the things that might ruffle the feathers because he doesn't or she doesn't want to lose the people. But that, again, also I think would shift so much if all fivefold were involved, because it's usually the prophets that are the ones that ruffle the feathers, and they're not afraid to do that. God has given them a supernatural boldness of a lion often, to be willing to question the status quo, to be willing to get the people stirred up and leave the nest. Come on, guys, you can fly! And the pastor is there to catch them if they fall, you know, and then the evangelist is out bringing more in, you know. Like, if we're all doing our part, it's so fun.
Absolutely.
And if you're trying to do all the parts, you're exhausted.
Exactly.
And you hate 4 of them if you're only called to one.
Well, it's God's playground, right? He's like, okay, you're being called. Like, it's kind of like a coach, right? So you have your bench warmers and that are on the bench thinking that, oh, I'm just going to sit on the bench all the time. What they don't realize is what God has deposited in them for, okay, now you're being called.
Yeah.
It's your time. Now go.
Yeah.
Now go. And that means, what does that mean? People have to sit down.
Other people have to
remove their position, thinking of who they are and what their function is in the church, to let the next person.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean they're seated forever.
No, they're being imparted for the next thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's actually like, I get excited when God says, okay, that assignment's done, Julie. Now you're going into here. Like, oh, what are we doing? Okay. Because that is for now. And when the grace lifts from your assignment, you better respond and remove yourself.
Right.
Because it will cause a friction. You will constantly feel like, gosh, I just keep, what is going on? And God's like, would you just sit down? I have this place that I'm getting ready to call you into.
Your time is up here.
Yep. And it's not a demotion. It's not like a hand slap. Now, is there correction if there's something morally that's going on and, there's a leadership, right? That's something completely different.
Yeah.
But when God says, okay, I needed you for that, for this time, for this season, but now the grace is gone. And that was something I was actually asking the Lord about this year. I'm like, Lord, I really don't feel like the grace is for this political cycle. But if this is the way that you're going to provide provision, then I'll say yes. Yeah. But he created another opportunity for me to not be in that position. And so that, again, just the grace.
This has been cool, just kind of to bring this subject up.
Yeah.
Talk about it. We're obviously not saying we know everything on it,
Absolutely
but we're
not.
willing to talk about it.
Right.
And this is how you kind of like spur on the conversations. There are answers to these things. My whole purpose in wanting to talk about these things is to inspire thinking differently and asking questions. Don't let other people think for you.
Exactly.
Think, ask questions. Think outside the narrow one focus lane. And allow other people into your life.
Right.
And ones that challenge you and that you don't understand fully. And that you can ask questions.
Exactly.
Like, why do you do that? Yeah. And I was just thinking about you being, again, I call you very apostolic. And the reason I say these names too, for me, is I want us to begin to understand the functions of these things, because
that's good. Yeah.
I don't need a label so that I can feel valuable.
Right.
But people need to know who to go to for what.
No, that's good.
And, like she was saying, we don't necessarily say, oh, Pastor so-and-so, Pastor. And isn't it funny that it's usually only at Pastor. Teacher Julie.
That's what I mean.
Evangelist Jessica.
That's what I mean. Isn't that interesting?
It is really funny. We've just been taught. It's been ingrained.
I know.
Pastor is the main position over a church. Let's break that down and start thinking it.
Love it. Yes.
So I was going to say, as an apostolic person, networking, like, you're always up to something new. In my mind, that's what I see you as. And so how do you balance being a mom? She's what, 16?
She'll be 15 next week.
15.
Yep.
And you're married. So how do you balance just the home life, but you're always going?
And I love that you said that, because I actually get to debunk something.
Okay.
So always going is actually, people see me when I'm out that I'm always going.
Right.
But the amount of time that I have at home to really cultivate my family environment, I'm very protective of that time. But when I'm going into something, it's all me.
Right. Full force.
Full force. Now, definitely it was a lot more before the car accident I was in. Right. So this last 2 years has been very challenging. Healing, reimagining, re-identifying who am I?
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of protection over that, because I can't give as much as I used to.
Yeah.
Which I'm in my best years. I feel so alive. Am I doing as much? No. But do I feel so right in the line of his will? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But when I do set my eyes on a course, it is a fierce pursuit.
Right.
Right. So people do, wow, she's just, yes, I'm on it because I am persistent with his promises that he's spoken. And I will not stop until he says it's done. Whether he says this is going to go or it's not. There's such this tenacity inside of me that says we are going to see the kingdom of God advance, and we are going to break down some things. So my husband is amazing. We've been married 20 years. Audrey, of course, she's 15, almost going on 30. She's already got her whole course of life set out before her, and she's not in that child rearing stage. So even with being able to travel and stuff, there's such a stability that's around our family right now. Has it always been there? No. Was me going part of an escape or an adrenaline? It was my drug of choice, was the adrenaline, because I came from such a controlled environment where I couldn't do so many things. And so when I broke free from that, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm free. I can do this and I can do that and I can do this. And oh my gosh, do you guys know that you can do this? And there was just this, everything that was trapped inside of me just like came out.
So
and
you had to experiment for
I
a while.
had to experiment for a while, and I bumped a lot of people, and there was a lot of conversations I was sat down to have with leaders and pastors, and I was like, ooh, sorry. But I was just like this wild child on fire for the Lord in a capacity that I was free.
Yeah.
So I would say right now, because of, again, circumstances and maturity that the Lord has had to deal with me on and root out some stuff.
Yeah.
It's very just stable.
Good.
And that's how I balance things. I say no a lot. I think people look at me and they're like, well, you're doing this and you're doing that. Do you know how many no's I say? Being in PR media, everybody wants promotions.
Right.
And I got inundated, and I finally just said, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can no longer help do this for this person, this person, this person. And with my new job now, it really is, I'm done.
Yeah. So, you're on a different lane right now.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would say it really is being intentional with your time.
And I have a question. When you found that freedom, I'm relating to that and the other side of it, as far as like, I was really under this religious control. I thought it was the churches that I was in. It was partly that, but not necessarily. Anyways, it was mostly spiritual. Like there's literally, I believe, major religious spirits in a lot of churches.
Oh, yeah.
So I was experiencing the same thing when I came out from the church institution, and God started saying, I want to show you some new things, girl. It's like,
yeah, right.
But you found this freedom because you were raised in a lot of control. And then it seems to me that sadly you ran into a lot of walls in the church as well.
Yeah.
And how did that affect you when here you are like, yes, I'm free, I can do whatever, and you're just having fun and you're like speaking your mind, asking questions, but getting your hand slapped a lot. Or so how did you start figuring out maybe this isn't a me problem? I mean, yes, you were in process. Yes, you had to work on some of your stuff and heal, but
well, I think to me it was I stepped outside of the church.
Okay.
I was like, okay. And the business world embraced me.
Okay.
The media world embraced me.
Right.
The government embraced me. There was such an embrace. I was like, oh, well, I thought the church was supposed to be the safe place where they're like, yeah, go dream all that you can dream. And we are right there with you. Again, no, they didn't know what to do with me.
Okay.
I mean, I did have a very strong spiritual mother by my side that helped process a lot of this, and without her I don't think I would be as healthy as I am today.
And you might have kind of tried to still fit into the church walls,
tried. I mean, I would get advanced into leadership immediately, and I'm like, I don't know if you want me. I kind of intimidate people for some reason, and I don't quite know why. I say something and it's like and so I remember this church, very conservative church, and my friend ended up taking on the leadership of the women's ministry, and she said, Julie, we need what you have. And I said, are you sure you need what I have? She's like, no, we want your fire in this group. Something needs to get lit up. And sure enough, I show up and I'm real quiet. First time I opened my mouth, my tone of voice, I don't know what it was. It just chaos ensued. And my friend was like, that's what we need. I'm like, but that wasn't very comfortable. Like, I felt like I was on a stake. You know, people were ready to burn me. And all I did was just challenge them in this one thing. Like, let's do this differently. People did not want anything to be messed with. But again, she had that leadership where she could massage some stuff. But they didn't have a relationship with me, but she knew what I needed to do in that space, and she made room for it.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that is really cool. We definitely grow as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to be engulfed in the kingdom. Like, I don't want to be the smartest one if you're the smartest one in the room, you're in the wrong room. Like, I don't want to be the most, everybody's looking to me for questions and answers. No, like, I'm in this place where meekness is not weakness. It's actually strength under control. So when I'm in a room, I love just listening and observing. And people that see me as this go-getter, they're like, oh, Julie's really quiet. I wonder what she's thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wait to respond until the Lord says, this is now when I need you to say something. Because I can hear myself talk all day long. I don't need to hear myself talk.
Right.
I'm like, what is it that the body of Christ is talking about? And God, how am I supposed to speak into this with the justice call that I have to bring truth and righteousness? So, yeah.
Yeah. I think we have some similarities in those things too, as far as just that. I think it was Lindsay Coyle that I first heard the phrase disruptors.
Oh,
I think we're disruptors.
Yeah, disruptors. Absolutely. I'm like, yeah.
But it's not for the sake of just wanting to disrupt things.
No.
But God has put that in us and we can't help ourselves.
Right.
And I guess I just want to remind you, anyone watching, that if you're a disruptor, maybe there's some stuff you need to work on because your heart isn't in the right place. Right. But maybe it's God and he's saying, keep at it. Part of being a disruptor is people get uncomfortable.
Right.
But if you keep working on you and growing in your maturity and your emotional health, recognizing you might still have some wounds that you're coming across really harsh and intense, or you don't care about the people, you have some things to work on. But be free in that process to know that it's okay that people aren't always going to be comfortable with you.
Right. Right. And love the people. You know, I think that's the biggest thing that you said is like, if you're going to disrupt a space, be sure that you love them and can see them through Jesus's eyes.
Yeah.
Because there's a filter that we have based on any past or pain or that we can actually interrupt what God wants to disrupt.
Yes.
Because we don't know the process that they're going through. And that takes a lot of maturity and humility and just discernment.
And letting other people into your life.
Yes.
Because
absolutely.
Sometimes, I mean, it helps a lot. Like, for example, we're in a room together of a meeting or something, and Julie will tell me something, or I'll tell her, like, I was kind of sensing this, or you getting, she's like, oh my gosh, yes, you know, and it's helpful. Yes. It's like, okay, we're not just the crazy one over here. Like, does no one see this? You know,
where two or more are gathered, right? Information. Okay, yes, so Lord,
wisdom and the counsel of many.
Absolutely,
and then being willing to like not speak it out, even if it feels like it's burning in your bones, but you realize, okay, timing is this the timing, Lord? Yes, it's a hard one to figure out, but
yes, absolutely,
relationship growth, willingness to humble yourself.
Yeah. Well, never forget, you know, one of your relatives, he would say relationship is built at the speed of trust.
Yes.
And I think that's huge, that we need to be able to trust people where they're at and knowing that there may be some things that they just aren't wanting to be vulnerable with. And it's not because they don't trust you. It's because maybe they don't even trust themselves to share it in a way that will actually be loving.
And you know what's funny as you say that, I think of the flip side, which is you have to be willing to trust some people, take some risks, to give them some chances to show who they are. A lot of people are afraid to trust at all. And they hold you captive until you prove yourself. And that's unhealthy.
That's a whole other conversation. Oh my. Yeah.
All right. Until next time.